two people who are taking my place, Dan Wallace, if you just stand up, and Jeremy Turner. If anyone has any questions about Division 2 matters, you can talk to them after this meeting. But Druid Hills got involved in this, in the coyote matter. Many people know there have been a number of meetings in the past year or two. The Fermex Science Center's had one. We had one here a year ago. Indicators had one in the past year. And toward the end of last year, late November and December, there were a number of questions about what Druid Hills Civic Association should be doing about the coyote matter. The president of the association, who is Bruce McGregor, he's here tonight to stand up in case anyone needs to talk with you afterwards, asked me to get involved in this. And knowing that the Civic Association was not going to commit any money one way or the other for the trapping or for any other effort, and I said I would organize a meeting, and that's what I've done. So I've introduced Druid Hills Civic Association members. These meetings are taking place a little bit more frequently as we try to understand what's going on with coyotes in town. They haven't been here for very long. And what the possibilities are for everyone over the coming years. Before I introduce the speakers, we have 3 speakers tonight, I'd like to tell you how it's going to go. I'm going to try to conclude this meeting within 1 hour. So I'm going to ask each of the speakers, I've asked them already, to speak for no more than about 8 minutes. And after that, we're going to have a Q&A period. And the way it will work is I will recognize you. You'll ask your question in the shortest way possible, the most concise way possible, so we can move through what will probably be many questions and then go home. And direct the question to the speaker you're interested in hearing from. If you want a follow-up from an additional speaker, you may say, well, how do you feel, Mary? You can put the question to her as well. But again, we should all know that many people are going to want to ask questions. And one thing we're not doing is we're not debating tonight. The speakers won't be debating one another. And during the Q&A, the audience will not, it's my preference that we not debate the speakers, that we stick with a strict Q&A structure. So let me introduce the speakers. Our first speaker is going to be Chip Elliott. Chip Elliott is a trapper in Atlanta. He lives east of Atlanta. He's been working in the metro area, a good 10 to 20 counties for the past 20 years. Has a lot of experience. He's been working in Druid Hills. He's working in a number of places today in Atlanta, Vinings, Peach and Battle. He's around quite a bit. The second speaker is Dr. Chris Mowry from Berry College. And he is working with Dr. Larry Wilson. And Larry, could you stand up so people can get to you afterwards if they want to talk with you? Dr. Larry Wilson from Fermex Science Center is working with Chris Mowry at Berry College, our second speaker, on studying in-town coyotes. And they'll tell you more about what they're doing. They've approached the city of Atlanta about working to that end. The third speaker has come all the way from Redwood City, to south of San Francisco, Mary Pagliari, and she flew in today. And she's with the Little Blue Society, and the Little Blue Society focuses on several things, including animal-human conflict resolution, and that's probably their primary task. And she'll be speaking third, and I welcome her. I'd also like to welcome Janet Kessler, is in the back. Janet really helped with this matter. She wrote to me quite a bit, trying to persuade me to invite Mary as a speaker. And so Janet has flown out from San Francisco as well with her husband. And it's good to have you here. Welcome to Atlanta. So we'll go ahead and start. Chip, again, Chip's going to talk for about 8 minutes. The others will talk about 8 minutes. Then we'll have the good Q&A. Thank you.
Bob said, I've been trapping here in Atlanta for coyotes. For coyotes, in the last 10 years, they're pretty new to the metro area. Now I'm full-time pretty much with coyotes. It's about 90% of my work. I want to give a little information about coyotes before we get into what you do about them. To understand the coyote, it is a predator. When he gets up in in the evening and dusk and heads out. He's looking for two things. He's looking for food. He's looking for invaders into his territory. If they protect their territory, they are a semi-pack animal where they will pack up on occasion, but the whole pack will defend the territory. They don't always hunt together. Sometimes they will. Sometimes they'll hunt as an individual. Coyote, when he heads out on his stroll for the evening, an average coyote's going to take a walk of 6 miles. That's a long ways overnight, but if you think about it, if we were to head out in the evening, that's not too bad at all. His main goal is going to be looking for the food. When he's traveling through an urban area, there's food everywhere he turns, so he doesn't have to look too hard. You have garbage, you have dog food, you have dead animals in the road that were hit during the day. You have gardens. He'll invade the garden. The garden's going to have insects. It's going to have other rodents for him to eat. So there's just a multitude of food, a buffet out there for him. He'll eat blackberries. He'll eat persimmons. There's not a thing that a coyote won't eat. Anything he cannot digest, and even some things he can't. One thing that they do prey on, though, that when he's eating all these other things, we don't really notice him there. You don't notice a few blackberries, or your garden missed a few fruit. You're going to blame it on the rodents. You don't even notice the squirrels or the few rats and stuff that he takes. When we get upset is when they start after our pets. Coyote's an animal of opportunity. He's not looking for your pet. He's looking for easy food. Whatever burns the less calories, the better. Unfortunately, our pets are not scared of the coyote. They don't realize he's not a friend. They think he's just a regular dog on the street. So a cat or a dog that approaches him or he approaches, they're doomed. As soon as he realizes he can get it, he's going to get it, and they really don't stand a chance. He's also going to, in the late fall or late winter and early spring, he's going to be out there to defend his territory from anybody that can try to threaten his pups. So they will attack larger dogs. I have known them to kill labs, pit bulls, no challenge. These animals are killers. They know how to kill instantly and not to get hurt. So they are not going to, your dog is not going to stand a chance with it. Now once again, once they find an easy food source, they're going to return until it's exhausted. If they have blackberry bushes, if they have lots of rats in an area, if they have persimmons, they're just going to keep coming back until it's gone. In the south of Georgia, they have a big problem with them on the watermelons. They eat up some watermelons. And it's a big problem down there for these watermelon farms. But when they find, you'll have areas where people feed feral cats. The coyote finds that area. I don't know how many times I've been called in where they'll clean out the whole population. They'll keep coming until it's gone. Once again, it's opportunity. It's easy food. And we provide this opportunity for them. And there's a lot of things we can do to prevent that. We cannot have bird feeders. Bird feeders are attracted to all kinds of food for the coyote. Rodents, birds, all that. He smells that when he comes through your yard, and it's going to be a hangout and a place he's going to check on his route. He's going to hit your. He's going to be looking for your trash, pet food that we leave out, and a lot of this stuff needs to be cleaned up so that you don't attract them. But they'll also eat like your acorns. There's just such a variety of food out there. It's so hard to discourage them. Rodents, mice, moles, rabbits, all these things in our yard, we would almost have to get rid of a lot of those just to keep that food out of our yard. So it's an extreme a lot of food out there in everybody's backyard. Then the nice landscaping we have between our houses and stuff provides excellent cover for them to travel back and forth. And there's not a whole lot we can do about that. We're not going to cut down all our landscaping after we put all these hours into it. But fences are a deterrent. But a coyote can clear a 4-foot fence standing still, and you can do it with a cat in his mouth. I've seen videos of it. So that's not an issue. You'd have to build an extreme fence in order to definitely keep them out. It'd have to be 10 to 12 foot high, two strands of electric on the top. You're going to have to dig 2 feet down, and you're going to have to go out in an L in each direction to keep them from digging underneath. If they want in, they're getting in. Keeping pets at home. Don't let pets wander. Wandering pets are just, they're just doomed. If they find them out there when they're traveling at night, they're just not going to make it money. And I go through a lot of subdivisions, you'll just see tons of missing cats and dog signs, and you know that there's a pretty high population of coyotes in that area. When you're walking your dogs in the area, you can carry pepper spray. I've had many dogs attacked on the leash, so it's not an uncommon thing. Once they get, they start to lose that fear of people. And that's the problem that we start to get in the metro area, is that these coyotes have been raised in our backyard since they were pups. We've never done anything that threatens them in any way. And after a while, they really don't care that we're there. I get many coyotes. We had it right here in North Druid Hills. Walk right down the sidewalk in the middle of the day. Really don't care that you're there. Don't run. You can yell at them. They just keep on walking. I've had airports where they just walk right down the runway. Plane comes on the runway. They step off. Plane goes by. Right back on the runway. They get so used to all of our activities, it doesn't faze them in any way. And that's where we start getting more conflicts. When they start getting braver, that's when they start getting more into our yards. That's when they start getting the pets right there in front of us. We let our dog out in our backyard or our cat just to use the bathroom, and it gets 5–10 feet from the back door, and here they come. They know it's there. They sense these smells when they're traveling through your community, and they know where the food is. Once again, it's opportunity. You've got your pet out there. It's easy food. It's just he's gonna jump on that opportunity. Trapping has shown over the years to be one of the most efficient ways to control your population. Ranchers out west have thrown everything that they could at the coyote. They wanted to eliminate the coyote. They trapped, they used cyanide, they shot them from helicopters, and the coyotes survived, and there's more numbers than there's ever been. So he's going to keep coming back. But the trapping does put the fear back in them. Like here at North Druid Hills, trapped 8 coyotes out of here last month. Hasn't been a coyote seen or heard for the most part since. 8 coyotes is not all the coyotes in North Druid Hills, I promise you. It was enough to put that fear. Nobody's seeing them. They're not being as brazen. This can last for as much as 4 years in a community. You don't have to come in and trap them consistently. When you trap them the first time, usually you get by a couple of years. When I have people, I do have some that trap every year just because they want to keep the population down. But we never take big numbers in that, and that's just their choice. The traps these days are a lot different than what everybody imagines. They don't have teeth, and they don't tear the foot, and the coyote doesn't chew his foot off. And animals do. Smaller animals do not have injury. Traps do not close all the way. This prevents small animals. I've caught chihuahuas in this type of trap before. Let them out, they're just fine. You might have some swelling, you might have a little bit of lacerations, but very minor. No different than a cut that they could get walking through the woods. I've never injured a pet. I've never had a child have an issue. These traps are swiveled. I spend a lot of money on these traps to make sure that they're safe for a community. Unfortunately, I do catch some pets, and that's most of the time, I'd say almost all the time, it's going to be the homeowner's fault, the pet owner's fault. The pet should be on a leash. That's the city ordinance. And if you have it off a leash, it's running a risk, not only of the traps, it's running a risk of getting eaten by a coyote. So if you keep the pet up, you have no issues. But when I do have issues, because pets do get away, my dog's gotten away from me before. I've actually caught my dog in a trap before. So, and I understand the panic. I freaked out when it first happened because I was right there and saw it. Went over, let him out of the trap. He kind of acted like a baby for a short time, and he was fine. And the same thing with small animals. These traps, I use certain lures, and I use a lot of times no lures at all. So I don't catch non-targets often. You do catch the raccoons and possums on occasion. Once again, I've actually had raccoons and possums that slip their foot out of here because it just doesn't close all the way. The coyote, of course, has to be euthanized by state law. But I still am concerned about the injuries. I don't want an animal hurt in a trap. Check my traps every single day. I try to have all my traps checked by noon. Everybody in the area knows where the traps, for the most part, are. I can't give exact locations all the time because I do have people that sabotage my traps. So I can't give exact locations, but everybody knows there is a trapping program going on. Post signs to let people know that there's a trapping program going on. Once again, you keep your pet on a leash, you do it in your own yard, so there's no danger to the pet. Whenever you hire a trapper, just make sure that he's a responsible trapper, has experience trapping coyotes. A lot of people claim to be coyote trappers. There's only a handful that are coyote trappers. Make sure they check those traps every day. The trapper that checks his traps every day will never cause an issue with pets or wildlife. You can release these animals. These traps, like I said, are very safe. They're not what people used to have. And checking them daily, you're not going to have an issue. Like I said, I've never damaged an animal's foot, and even the coyote's feet are absolutely fine. If you go on my website, you can see many pictures of coyotes caught. There's no blood, there's no injury to the animal itself. And I also have pictures of even smaller animals caught in there. Unfortunately, the coyotes are here, they're here to stay. We're not going to get rid of them. And we have to tolerate a certain amount of their presence. And I understand that when they eat your pets, that's going too far. When they're getting too brazen, that's going too far, in my opinion. The rest of it is up to the individuals. When I trap areas, some people don't want coyotes, period. They're worried about their children. That's a very minor concern. There have been occasions where people have been attacked. All this always ends up happening after the point where the coyotes get brazen. So just keep an eye out for them at all times, and just be wary where your pets are at all times, and keep them under control. You shouldn't have such an issue with the coyotes getting them, and the coyotes are here to stay, and they're in pretty good numbers now.
Thank you, Chip Elliott. Can everyone hear in the back? I think the microphone's a little further away. I'm going to turn the air off, I think. Getting a little cool. Okay, thank you again. Our second speaker is Professor Chris Mowry. He's from Berry College. He's head of the biology department, and he's a former Druid Hills resident, and it's good to have him here. I think one of the most striking things he said to me is that we really don't fully understand the coyote that's in Atlanta and Georgia. We understand the western coyote very well, and there's some overlap between the two coyotes, certainly. But he is particularly interested, he's interested in many things, but in exploring and assessing this Atlanta coyote, this coyote in the southeast. So this is Chris Mowry, Professor Chris Mowry from Berry College.
Thank you all. Okay, thank you for having me tonight. Appreciate it. Call this up and just show you a little. So I want to start off by saying that I was a resident of Druid Hills at one point. I lived on Ridgewood Road. I also lived in Decatur. I lived in Morningside, so I know the area very well. As Bob says, I'm a professor at Berry College, which is in Rome, Georgia right now, a professor of biology. I've been studying coyotes since, I think, the year 2002. I want to mention also my friend Larry Wilson, who Bob pointed out earlier. Larry and I went to graduate school together at Emory, and I've been interested in this topic for a while, and so we'll tell you a little bit about some of the plans we have, hopefully later on, looking at coyotes in an urban environment here in Atlanta. So my task here, or the way I see it, is I just simply want to provide you some information and educate you a little bit. So I thought I would start off just by telling you about the canids that are found in North America. You know, what are these dogs that live in North America? There are essentially four of them. There is the gray wolf, Canis lupus. There's the red wolf, Canis rufus, there's the coyote, Canis latrans, and then there's the domesticated dog, Canis familiaris. So these 4 animals are different species. They all belong to the same genus, which is Canis, but they belong to different species, meaning that they are potentially or theoretically reproductively isolated from one another. The problem, and I saw this referred to recently in a paper, and I really liked it, is that reproductive separation between those species is not as strong as it is in other species, and so someone referred to this as Canis soup. And so I've got in here the gray wolf, the domestic dog, the red wolf, what some people refer to as the eastern wolf, which is found in Canada and up into the northeast, the western coyote, which is where the coyote is historically from, and then this concept of potential hybridization that might go on. And so then I've got little pictures here of DNA, just simply trying to illustrate the fact that we do know that these animals exist as different species, but we really don't know a lot about how they maintain these reproductive barriers. In other words, there is hybridization that is going on in certain places. And so it's led to this, I think is a very interesting biological perspective, but we really don't know, how much hybridization is going on, what are the evolutionary histories of these animals, and so there's still a lot that we don't know about these animals. For example, this is an animal that we're studying. We had a radiotelemetry study going on up at Berry. We tracked 2 what we call melanistic or black coyotes. This is rare in coyotes. Generally, we don't see this color, but we see it. I was talking to Chip about this earlier. We see this color in the southeast. We know that this gene comes from, it was found in the red wolf. It was also found in domesticated dogs. So the theory is that this gene jumped into coyote populations probably through a process what we call introgression, which is hybridization between somebody carrying this gene, an animal carrying this gene, whether it was a domesticated dog 30,000 years ago or whether it was a red wolf, and some level of hybridization occurred and that gene jumped from that particular species into the coyote. So I'm interested in these black coyotes from a biological perspective because it might provide us insight as to the evolutionary history of the coyote and simply what's going on with its DNA. Just some basic characteristics of coyotes, and Chip talked a bit about this. Generally smaller than wolves, weighing between 25 and 40 pounds is the general weight of a coyote. There are some that are larger than that, but the general weight is between 25 and 40 pounds. They do live in territorial packs. There's an alpha male and an alpha female, and then they may keep around one of their offspring for another year to help then raise subsequent offspring. But from what we know about coyotes, they are not large pack animals. They are social animals. As I say, they do form these small pair bonds. And they will mate for life, and they will raise those offspring. And again, some of the remaining offspring will stick around and help to raise subsequent offspring. Now, there are other individuals that are out there looking for territory. So those individuals that are breeding and have these pairs, they are establishing territories. And if you hear them howling, that's what they're trying to do, is they're trying to maintain that territory, as Chip says. And they're going around and they're marking their territory just like your dog would do. So they're maintaining those territories through a variety of mechanisms, vocalization, and then also by marking the territory by going around and peeing on it. Now those that don't have territories exist as transients, and so they're out there looking for territories. So we'll get to that a little bit later. The coyote mom, dad, and those siblings help to raise the offspring. That's the traditional, that is how these animals have evolved. And so both parents are involved in the rearing of the offspring. They are seasonal breeders and generally breeding in the wintertime. And then they're giving birth after a 63-day gestation period. They're giving birth in the early spring, the late spring, but they are very seasonal breeders, so they're not breeding year-round. They are sexually mature in their first year, meaning that they have the potential to be prolific breeders. So think about that. A coyote that is born, in March or April or May is potentially sexually mature and could potentially breed the following year. they are elusive animals generally. Generally in this area, they are what we call crepuscular. They are active primarily at dawn and dusk. Now, coyotes out west, very active during the day, and coyotes could normally be active during the day here. But coyotes are very adaptable animals, and they will adjust their behavior so that they're not harassed. So if they're being harassed during the daytime, they're going to shift that behavior and try to be active more, at night or generally during dawn and dusk. So times when humans are not as active. Successful in a variety of habitat types, and I'll show you some pictures about this in a moment. And they are omnivores. I classify them as omnivores. As Chip says, they will eat just about anything, which is why they're so successful. This just is a map that shows coyote distribution through time, and the thing to see here is that prior to 1900, I don't know, hopefully you all can see that, but prior to 1900, coyotes were restricted to regions west of the Mississippi River. They started to move east, and you can see, so in between 1900 and the 1930s, that eastward migration took part in the northern parts of the U.S. and into Canada. 1940s and 50s, they started to fill into the southeast, and by the 1980s, really the coyote was found and is found in every state in the United States except Hawaii. So coyotes are throughout North America. Now that expansion was brought on by us wiping out the gray and the red wolf. We were very good as humans in wiping out gray wolves in the north and in the west, and we were good at wiping out red wolves here in the southeast. And that essentially created a vacuum that the coyote was able to fill by moving eastward. I want to make this point. I don't want to be a biology professor too much here, but I do want to make the point that living organisms evolve, and I have a little lesson there at the bottom as to how natural selection works. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that environmental selection pressures differ in certain, they can differ wherever, and so traits can change in response to those different environmental selection pressures. So what we know about coyotes out west, we may not know as much about them here in the southeast because the environment is different. Sure, they're probably very similar to western coyotes, but we have different temperatures here. We have different amounts of rainfall. We have different kinds of plants here. We have different animals here. And so, and coyotes have very quick generation times. And so the way natural selection works is that if you are an organism that is well adapted to your environment, you're going to survive and reproduce and pass on the genes that make you successful in that environment. If you have genes and traits that don't make you successful in a particular area, you're going to die and you're not going to pass on those genes. And so, again, are coyotes the same in the southeastern U.S. as they are in other parts of the U.S.? Probably, but might there be differences? And Chip and I were talking about some of those differences, and maybe he can talk about that later. We just really don't know, and so I'm sort of making a plea that we feel that more research is needed for on coyotes here in the southeast. Can we get rid of coyotes? Okay, just a few things about humans and predators. Okay, roughly $10 million is spent each year in the United States on livestock protection. Okay, this includes the killing of about 75,000 coyotes per year. Okay, research showed that sheep on public lands, sheep populations dropped 85% in the 1940s. Was that? And many people wanted to blame that on coyotes. Well, it turned out that the price of hay, rancher wages, and lamb prices had much more to do with sheep declines than coyotes. So we have this kind of reaction as human beings to predators. Let's get rid of them. It doesn't always work. It's very difficult to do, and it oftentimes has unintended, what I call collateral ecological damage. Just again, some other data from the literature. In the San Diego area, 75 populations of scrub and chaparral birds have gone locally extinct. It turns out that birds that were in patches that contained coyotes actually fared better. And we think this is probably because of what's called mesopredator release and the fact that coyotes can evict some smaller predators. Cats, one of those things that it may evict. And so when these smaller mesopredators are around, they may be actually preying upon these ground nesting birds and actually be, so those smaller predators are what are actually detrimental to those bird populations, and the presence of coyotes may actually be beneficial by keeping in check those smaller predators. Is that always what happens? Maybe, maybe not. You know, again, we just don't know. But that's certainly something to keep in mind, is that the coyote can act as a predator on some of these other organisms and help to keep things in balance. Collateral ecological damage, the removal in Texas, okay, at a 20,000 hectare study site. 354 coyotes were removed. That means they were trapped and they were euthanized. Within 9 months after those coyotes were removed, 11 of 12 rodent species disappeared, and the plot was overrun by the 12th rodent species. So in other words, where there was diversity of these 12 different rodent species, you took out the coyotes, and 11 of them went locally extinct, and the 12th one just went wild. And so the point of that study was that the presence of the coyotes actually increased diversity. It helped to keep those rodent populations in check with one another. Skunks, foxes, bobcats, badgers, and jackrabbits flourished in this particular area. Quail and other ground nesting birds went locally extinct. And so, again, oftentimes indirect effects are the rule rather than the exception. We start, you know, manipulating Mother Nature, and we really don't know what the effects are going to be. Urban coyotes. As Chip said, coyote sizes are linked to food. More, more coyotes, okay? Reliable food means smaller territories and higher densities of coyotes. If you don't have to go far and wide, you know, to find your food, why, you know, wander all around? If you can, you know, if you can find meals and do what you want to do in a small area, then stay put, and that's what coyotes will do. And so that means that densities would be higher. If you have smaller territories, you can pack more coyotes into a particular area. I mentioned here cat food. Coyotes are attracted to cat food. You know, over and over again, this is what we see, and this is not just with coyotes, okay? This is with any animal, okay? Food is the limiting resources. You provide easy access to food, you're going to have more of these kinds of animals that perhaps become problematic over time. So cats are not normal prey for coyotes. Cats and coyotes did not evolve together, okay? Does a cat make a nice meal for a coyote? Potentially it could, but the thing that's probably happening is the coyote is becoming accustomed to the presence of food. Maybe somebody's feeding their cat outside, you know, whatever it is. The coyote comes to associate cat food with food, and now the cat food's taken away, but there's a cat around, okay? Well, that might, you know, do just as well as cat food. Once fear of humans is overcome, then we had this discussion earlier, okay, and we talked about the fact that the coyotes may become, they may associate the presence of humans with food, whereas normally the coyote may just not pay the attention to humans. And it can become problematic if the coyote then comes to associate human beings with food. Hey, this is where humans live. I know I can get food here. I think I'll hang out here. Okay. And then the point of killing resident coyotes allows a replacement of transients. Again, you've got these animals that have territories. If you remove those animals from those territories, you've now opened up a territory that somebody else is wandering around out there and says, hey, this looks like a nice place. I think I will move in here. So that potentially can happen as well. You get this kind of stuff. Okay, various pictures that have appeared, you know, in various. This is from National Wildlife in 2006, and so, you know, as I say, coyotes do very well around humans. They've been. This was on the train in the Phoenix airport, I believe. They've been found in elevators. You know, they're in people's backyards, and so this is not normal behavior for coyotes. But once they become accustomed to the presence of humans, they overcome some of this wariness. You know, they're again looking for food. We start to see sort of odd behavior. Can coyotes and humans coexist? And Mary's going to talk a bit about this, and I know I've gone over my time, but I like to advocate the surgical approach, the surgical tweezer approach, as opposed to the anvil approach. Okay. A study in California, a place called Hopland Research Center, found that nearly every sheep that was killed by a coyote was killed by an alpha coyote. In other words, that male or female that holds that territory and that is the alpha animal of that small group. And so it may be that if there is a problem, simply going after any and every coyote that you find may not be the answer. So if we need to look at management issues, we like to advocate what we call passive management as opposed to active management. We like to advocate the best management practices for coexistence with coyotes, and Mary again will talk a bit more about this, I believe. First of all, eliminate food, whether it's intentional feeding or unintentional feeding. Get rid of any possible food sources. Education, we just want to educate people. And there needs to be enforcement. And so as Chip is talking about, there are leash laws, for example. And so those kinds of things, unfortunately, need to be enforced. So the control of free roaming outdoor feral cats should be controlled. Properly disposing of roadkill and carcasses, controlling deer populations potentially. That's something that we're looking at, and something that's being in the literature right now. We really don't know what effect are coyotes having on deer populations. They could potentially be affecting deer populations, probably primarily by preying upon fawns, but the jury is still out. There have been some recent studies that are looking at that. And then to set policies for normal versus problem coyotes. So again, passive management will decrease coyotes is what we believe. Management, though, requires cooperation. It requires cooperation with local governments. It requires cooperation among neighbors. It requires education. And so coyotes are, as Chip says, they're here to stay, okay? They prefer rural. They evolved in rural kinds of habitats, okay? They avoid contact with human beings, okay, generally, unless they have access to food. We talk about a fed coyote being a dead coyote, sort of the same motto that was used with bears. A fed bear is a dead bear. So keep food away from coyotes. Okay, so that's all I have to say. Thank you for having me very much.
Thank you. We're going to get to our final speaker. You see I'm letting him go on a little bit longer. And our third and final speaker is Mary Pagliari from the Little Blue Society out near San Francisco.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Mary Pagliari, and I'm a human-animal conflict consultant with the Little Blue Society. And my background is in behavioral ecology, as well as I'm a professional tracker. The Little Blue Society is a nonprofit organization that focuses on creating a just balance between meeting current human needs and preserving the local ecology for future generations to come. We do this by resolving human-animal conflicts over shared use of geographical areas and resources, and we create win-win solutions for all parties concerned, including the animals. We custom design short and long-term conflict resolution strategies to meet each individual situation, and we set up programs for cities and counties on coexistence and provide training for professional personnel. We've helped numerous cities, counties, businesses, homeowners associations, communities, and private individuals nationally and internationally permanently resolve their conflicts with wildlife. And we've had an enormous amount of success doing that. Now, human-animal conflicts are on the rise, not only here in the United States, but throughout the world. Urbanization is one of the leading causes of habitat loss and fragmentation. Now, three things happen to wildlife when habitats are lost. They relocate if they can find a comparable area to relocate to. They die off if they cannot deal with the changes we make in their environment. They adapt, and they learn to live closer to us, like the coyotes. Now, coyotes are found in growing numbers of cities and suburbs throughout North America. Studies have shown that they utilize small patches of habitat, such as parks, highway easements, and sometimes our properties, if we have adequate cover in our backyards. but they still rely on natural areas to hunt. Now, most encounters with coyotes are sightings. This can happen anytime during the day. Coyotes are diurnal, meaning that although they may be more active during times between dusk and dawn, you can see them during any times of the day. This is not aberrant or abnormal behavior. Studies have also shown that coyotes avoid human-related areas and areas of high human activity. In order to do this, coyotes may sometimes change their activities to strictly nighttime hours. Now, the vast majority of conflicts with coyotes occur when coyotes move into our neighborhoods or move through them, and they incidentally and opportunistically forage on free-roaming cats, unattended small pets, or have territorial disputes with our dogs. Coyotes do not actively seek out our pets or other sources of human-related foods. Studies done on over 1,400 coyote scats collected from dense residential areas in Cook County, Illinois, revealed that rodents, rabbits, and fruits were the most common foods, while human-related food sources made up only 1.9% of their diet. Even in heavily urbanized areas of Southern California, only 25% of the coyote's diet comprised of human food sources, which shows that even in urban areas, coyotes do not become conditioned to human food sources. They are not truly attracted by it, and they do not actively seek it out. It's only during times when there is natural prey scarcity or drought conditions that they will expand their foraging range and move closer to our properties, and they will take advantage of what they find there. So you might ask, what are the management implications? In times of severe weather, where there may be a sharp decline in coyotes' natural prey base, and under drought conditions, or when there is a disturbance in their habitat because of development, you're more likely to have coyotes coming closer to your homes, searching for food, water, and possibly shelter. These are times when you should remove all food sources from around your property so that the coyotes don't have a reason to hang around. And you need to ramp up the protection on your pets. Keep your cats indoors until you see that the coyotes have left the area. Supervise all small dogs when outdoors, and keep all dogs on a leash when you are walking them. In order to minimize conflicts with coyotes, we must be able to anticipate and predict their behavior to some degree, to know how their behavior changes with various environmental factors. Now, some believe that trapping and killing coyotes is an effective solution. However, it doesn't work. Even as Professor Mowry said, for 200 years we have tried to eliminate or suppress their population through lethal control, but it has done nothing to reduce livestock predation and to bring human-coyote conflicts under control. You would need to consistently kill around 70% of the breeding population or greater to achieve some reduction. Not only is this impossible, the results would still be temporary. When conflicts do occur, the knee-jerk reaction of most communities is to go out and kill the offending coyotes. But the truth is that most times the wrong coyotes are killed, and removal only gives the appearance that something immediate is being done. But when coyotes are trapped and destroyed, you are making more problems for yourself and others. Because when you remove a number of coyotes from an area, it creates a vacuum, and other coyotes, known as transients or floaters, will move in to fill that vacancy. And because of the increased ratio of available food per coyote, more of the pups from the litters will survive, whereas under natural conditions, pup survivability is much lower. The coyote pack, or family unit, is made up of the alpha pair, the yearling pups from the last season called betas, and the most recently born pups. Now, the only coyotes that breed within this family unit are the alpha pair. All others are what's known as behaviorally sterile. They do not breed. Now, studies that Dr. Robert Crabtree did in Yellowstone on exploited and unexploited populations has shown that when you start killing adult-sized coyotes, the surviving coyotes will start breeding at a younger age, with the birth rate tripling, and with only a few adults left to feed the resultant larger litters. The adults are under extreme pressure to find food for the pups. These are the times that the coyotes are forced to seek out novel forms of food that they would not ordinarily eat, such as larger game, easier sources of food such as pets, pet food, or livestock. And the human-coyote conflict continues. You're most likely trapping more coyotes here in Atlanta than you did last year. This is not indicative of a more successful trapping program. It simply means that there are more coyotes out there. And unfortunately, the more you kill, the more coyotes you will be replacing them with. So what are the management implications? The average breeding age of coyotes start at around 4 years old, with reproduction declining at about 6 years of age. Now this results in territories being maintained by an older, non-producing alpha pair, which means the number of coyotes in the area will remain stable without much growth in numbers. Quite simply, the management implication is that if you want fewer coyotes, stop killing them. Studies have even shown that by removing one single coyote, this results in a slight increase in territory, with more females breeding. Now this needs to be a uniform regional change, not only in governmental policy, but in personal coyote management. Because if someone here in Atlanta is privately hiring a trapper to kill coyotes, they're creating problems not only for themselves, but for everyone else in Atlanta, and eventually everyone else in Georgia. Because with more coyotes replacing the ones that are being removed, it increases the potential, more coyotes come in, and it increases the potential for more human-coyote conflicts. I want to make it absolutely clear that I'm not here to put anyone out of business. We all need to make a living and to feed our families. Now, Chip Elliott's help is needed in dispersing coyotes from areas they're not wanted. So why not change the tools in the toolbox so that you are utilizing good, effective, proven science, not doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different outcome. If you want fewer coyotes at numbers that are tolerable to you, the cycle of killing must be broken. There are ways that are quite effective to permanently keep coyotes away from areas that doesn't require killing them. This has been done through the use of exclusion, various deterrents, and habitat and behavioral modification. I've been doing this for the past 10 years with a great percentage of success. Now, private vertebrate management companies are springing up everywhere throughout the United States, where they use non-lethal techniques to rid the area of coyotes and other wildlife. These companies are making money hand over fist, and they never run out of work. Because this is a methodology that not only delivers results, the general public is more accepting of them. If positive change is to be made, we need to understand the behavior and the biological responses of wild animals that we are trying to manage. And we need to design programs that are effective and that are based on good science that targets the root of conflict. We help cities and counties to set up such management coexistence programs. If you're interested in setting up such a program here in Atlanta, please feel free to talk with me after this meeting is done. We also train police officers, animal control officers, as well as trappers on a technique called vexing, which uses aversive conditioning to modify the behavior of so-called problematic coyotes. And in the 15 or more years that I've been doing this with coyotes, I have never met a single coyote whose behavior I have not been able to change, because the behaviors that are aberrant or incorrect are those behaviors that are conditioned, and that is learned behavior, and learned behavior can be changed 100%. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. And we're going to move into the Q&A period again. And what I'm going to have is ask the three speakers to come up so they can use the microphone and just stand up here all together. And you can put your question, we'll just take the questions one at a time. Remember, concision is good. Just short, right to the point, right to the speaker, and we'll move through it for about 30 minutes. And then I'll keep the parish hall open another hour afterwards for those who want to just hang around and speak one-on-one with the speakers, the people from Druid Hill Civic Association, Larry Wilson from the Fermic Science Center. I'm not sure if there's anyone else here tonight who would be interested in talking with anyone in the audience about coyotes. Anyone from the DNR here tonight? You're from the DNR? Great, thank you for coming. We have someone from the DNR. So let's go with the Q&A, and we'll start right here at the beginning, right at the front.
Yeah, I wanted to ask Chip, you had said after you had trapped the 8 to 9 coyotes here in Blue Hills, you had noticed they had picked up on the idea that there were traps out and some of their people were missing, or their coyote friends were missing, and they started not showing up as often?
Well, the sightings stopped as far as the animals walking out boldly in the daytime. I've actually had coyotes track me when I'm checking my traps and to see where their pack members are going. They're very social. They communicate and keep track of each other every night to where their locations are. Well, when somebody doesn't answer that call, they go looking for them. Well, they pick up the scent of where they were last, and they also pick up the scent of me checking the traps. And it doesn't take long before that, so they're a very intelligent animal. That association picks up right away. You don't have to go in and take out a whole population of coyotes to put the human fear back in. And that's all I'm trying to say is you want them to have that natural human fear. And that shows them back again that we are the dominant animal in the area. And so that's where when they see a person, they hide. What the coyote's supposed to do when he sees a person, he should hide from you. He should run. He's not supposed to stand there and confront you in the driveway or in the street or walk down the street nonchalant. We just want them to instill that fear back into them that they don't own the place.
We're the alpha.
That we are alpha. If we let them go in our backyard and walk our dog, they're not going to run up there and grab our dog because they're not scared of us. They're going to run off and go about their hunting techniques.
Is that good?
Yeah.
Okay, yes, sir. In the green shirt, please.
Yeah, I'd say I love a good ending there too. I'm going to a bar. I'll be exchanging some. Dr. Mary, is there any scientific evidence that conforms to the anecdotes that Mr. Elliott has just mentioned? And what's the difference between when ponds started being popular and herons proliferated, started eating fish out of ponds? The human approach wasn't to try to kill herons. I mean, we had to adapt to the natural their place in the cycle of that cycle. Dr. Wilson, any comments on those?
Yeah, I may let Larry comment on herons. You know, as far as you know, what Chip is saying is, and coyotes passing on this information to one another. You know, I don't know of any studies, okay, but I'm not going to contradict necessarily what Chip is saying. You know, as far as I do believe that they are able to detect our presence. You know, I don't doubt that there are others that are around that would be picking up on the fact that humans are, that this trapping is going on and determining what's going on and realizing that others, may be missing that we're of the same social group or that, we're potential rivals. But I'm not familiar with studies that suggest that information is being passed along. But then again, I'm going to hedge a bit because I agree, that these are very intelligent animals. And they do pick up on this kind of information. And this sort of gets back to what I was saying about with, animals evolve, living organisms evolve, traits can change, and so I believe that you throw different kinds of selection pressures at them, they may respond accordingly.
Okay, maybe one over here, yes, ma'am. Right. Nice and loud too, so
Okay,
everyone can
sure.
hear.
I was just curious, is there another way to deter the coyote without actually removing the alpha? So you're making
Who
them
is
afraid
it
of
to?
humans again.
Just anyone?
Anyone. If they-
Did you hear the question? Could you repeat it one more time, please?
Is there a way to condition the alpha male to be afraid of humans again without removing him, so you don't have that vacuum for another animal to fill?
Oh, absolutely.
And what would that be?
Well, for one thing, coyotes are wary of novel things in their environments. So they will avoid things that are pretty much new. And when you talk about coyotes habituating, or any type of wildlife habituating to things, it's simply orienting behavior. They just get used to things being in the environment. It's a way that they conserve energy so that they're constantly not bombarded by all kinds of stimulus in the environment, so that they can concentrate on those things that are important. So, I mean, eventually they figure out we're not really in a predatory relationship with them. We're not competitors for territory. So, the longer that they're around us, they eventually ignore us. And that's what habituation means, that they ignore you. So at some point, you can go ahead and let the coyote know that they're not welcome in certain areas by using aversive conditioning. If they come into your backyard frequently, then what you need to do is modify the habitat. Like I said, they're creatures of habit. If they go through an area where changes have been made, they don't like those changes, so they probably won't come back. So you can use scent deterrence, you can use exclusion if exclusion is possible. But then that's one way of teaching a coyote, by using noisemakers, or if they're doing behavior that is not acceptable, then once they're actually behaving in that way, you make a loud noise and you scare them so that they associate that behavior with the loud noise that scares them. And in that way you can modify their behavior.
Okay, thank you. Yes, sir, right there, please.
Yes, I'm the advocate for cat animals. This is a relatively new subject with the, it's my understanding that these leg traps, some of them, I don't know that yours or not, that's my question, are banned in 88 countries because they're inhumane. Are your traps of that kind?
No, this trap is, the best management practices is a study group that evaluates all traps. They travel with trappers, biologists, and they come up with the best, safest trap for the animal's welfare. The trap I use is one of their, they have a recommendation of like 5 different traps. I use 2 of the 5 different traps. There's only 2 traps I use, 2 of them I use. And I have my own personal reasons I've had, and it's just the success I've had with those individual traps. But that research is done through the United States and through Canada, and you can look it up as best management practices.
Thank you very much.
Yes, in the black shirt, please. You. Thank you.
I have 2 questions for Jeff again.
Okay, nice and loud and short questions, please.
What happens to the coyote from the moment it's trapped until you dispose of the body? And also, I wasn't clear in setting the traps. Is that just put on the private property that engage your services? Or are the traps set around the city, on public land? Just maybe clarification.
It's illegal to set traps without homeowner's permission or with private property. Yes, you must have property owner's permission to place traps on the property. And what was the first part of that question?
What happens to the coyote from the moment it's trapped until the body is disposed of?
Once he's in the leg hole trap, videos and studies have shown that at first, of course, he's startled, just like any other animal would be. They struggle for a period that seems most average 15 to 20 minutes. And then after that point, they usually lay down, may get up periodically, try to pull again and lay down. I've walked up many times when it's windy and stuff or raining, and the coyote's just laying there, curled up. I've had them sleeping in the trap. And it also is going to depend on that animal's structure in the hierarchy. You have an alpha male, he's much more aggressive, he's going to struggle and fight it more than, say, a submissive young who is just pretty much going to lay there. Even after he's caught, he's going to be, I pick him up, I put him in the truck, I said, this young's just going to lay there. An alpha male's going to fight him probably most of the way. He's going to feel more dominant. When I remove the animal, I remove all my animals alive, I put them in a cage, I take them to my property, I hold them for 72 hours, which the law allows. I hold them for 72 hours for the fact that an animal was in a trap, or in that area somebody or some pet could have possibly been bitten. If I get a report of that, then I have the animal there to test for rabies or any diseases, so it can save people on shots. And then after that time, the animal must be euthanized according to state law.
How do you do that?
According to state law, there's 3 different options, and I prefer not to get into how they're euthanized. They're euthanized according to the state law.
Yeah, let's go to the next question. They're put down, euthanized. Christy?
Is there any reason to believe?
Wait, excuse me. We can come back to that, and I'll bring that up. I'll come back to that. Let's just get Christy. Go ahead and ask your question.
Is there any reason to believe that the following would not be effective? And this is the question for all of you. Trap the coyote, pee on him, human pee on him. Possibly use some audible sounds that are realistic in order to deter the coyote from coming in any closer. Any reason?
Are they becoming more commonplace? As I said, they have moved into this part of the world. This part of the country has population grown in the last 20, 30 years. No question about it.
Well, like you said, one of the things, we don't know a lot about the southeastern coyote because he's new. He's new to the southeast, or just a new animal. And so, but just like they say, the alpha male and alpha female are supposed to be only 2 that breed, and that's been the studies out west for years and years and years. When I'm trapping here in town, one of the things I've seen is the breaking of that rule. I've had dens with multiple litters in the same den. I've caught, late in the season, 3 females in the same exact trap on a piece of property. They're saying now that there's some studies showing that 60 to 80% of the adult females will breed now in the southeast. I was reading on that the other day. So we haven't, and they're evolving. We don't know what they're doing. And just like it says, through time, the animal evolves, and coyotes are one of the best at adapting and changing to stress in their environment. And I'm seeing that with the multiple litters out of the same pack, which is breaking all the rules.
I don't think it's necessarily breaking all the rules. It simply holds true that once you manipulate a coyote population through lethal methods, they compensate for that by breeding, uncontrolled. You knock out the older animals, the younger animals start breeding at a younger age. That's why you have multiple litters in one area. It's just simple science.
Just about 5 more questions, I think, so that we can go ahead and end. Yes, sir, right there.
Yes,
And then I'm going to get over to you.
As I understand it, part of the population pressure on coyotes was wolves. They've been removed. So how is that lethal pressure different than human lethal pressure as far as their expansion?
Wolves on coyotes? Yeah, well, first of all, historically, you would have had red wolves here, and they were not, and coyotes were not here. So these 2 animals, so it was not as though the red wolf was the predator on the coyote. Okay, we're talking about animals that evolved in 2 separate areas. Now, coyotes and gray wolves do coexist, and they are, gray wolves will be predators on coyotes. They'll kill coyotes in Yellowstone, but they're also competitors as well. So there is this balance because those animals have evolved together. So if that answers your question. So there is some predation by gray wolves on coyotes. It's not extensive, but there is some predation that goes on. But again, those animals have evolved together over many thousands of years.
So you'd say it's probably more competition for resources?
Between
out west.
Out west, it is more so competition, but clearly the gray wolf is what we call the apex predator. The gray wolf is clearly above the coyote, and the coyote is, just stealing the scraps of the gray wolf, essentially.
Yes, sir, right there.
Yeah, I have a quick question. I'd like to start with Mary, but then possibly open it up to everybody.
Just
within
all quickly, because we're right up, coming up
very
on
quickly, and I'll follow up afterwards. Within the state of Georgia, it is animal control where they exist, in the counties where they exist, and if not, it is either the police or the sheriff's department that would be called in cases to handle this. And in 100% of the cases, you're going to find that the coyotes are killed. The county and municipal animal control facilities have no training in that. They wouldn't know what to do at this point anyway. And I can talk about it later, but I'm in a position to influence that. I would like to know, pushing out to animal control facilities throughout the state of Georgia, what would you advise if you're wanting to avoid euthanasia in these animals to try to impact their impact on us without having to go that route? What kind of public policy changes should we be pushing?
Well, for one thing, we actually trained the Sheriff's Department in Santa Clara County, California, and it was aversive conditioning of mountain lions. When these guys come into the area, we teach the sheriffs, if there is open space that they can escape to come in blaring with their sirens. And also, if it's areas where they could actually shoot off air guns, that would work. Sometimes with coyotes, we start out very simply by using aversive conditioning. It's called vexing, and I've instructed a lot of agencies to do this. You can't just go out there and generally haze a coyote, because whatever methodology you're using, they'll eventually habituate to it, and it won't mean anything because they don't understand why you're waving your arms around and screaming at them when they're doing absolutely nothing, just standing 5 feet away from you. So what you do is you get the coyote to misbehave, whatever that behavior is that you're trying to correct. And then at that moment, you have to apply the correction, whatever that correction is, to scare the coyote. And then they will associate that behavior with the correction, and it probably will not misbehave again. It can be anything from shooting them with paintball guns, bear scare darts, it all depends. But you start with the minimum of scare tactics, and then you escalate it until you achieve the behavior that you want in the animal. And it's very simple to do.
Okay, is that good?
I can do the follow-up afterwards.
Okay, that would be great. I'm going to get to you last, Christine. And yes, sir, right there in the hat, please.
If I understand you guys right, the density issue is going to be because of food and territory. We're all going to go home and cover up the compost and take the dog food off the porch, but in regards to the territory, I'm just curious for anyone, whether research and practice, how effective is scenting the areas with, I'm just making this up, alpha male cologne, and saying, hey, no vacancy, move along. Is that something that's effective?
No. There have been situations where farmers have actually moved their trucks into areas where coyotes come through. Just the entire, just the novel stimuli of having a truck in their environment that they're used to moving through all the time, something's different. It keeps them away. But this is something that you have to change, every once in a while so they don't acclimate to it or habituate to it. So, I mean, wildlife is pretty simple. They adapt to the changes we make in their environment. They react to whatever changes we make in their environment. So we can pretty much control their behavior very easily.
There's no cologne.
Spraying the cologne will probably attract more coyotes.
Yes, sir, right there.
I wanted to know, in the cab area, is there any kind of interactive map that shows where they've been sighted?
No.
I don't know if they're in our neighborhood other than the missing kitty.
Yeah, that's something that is a component of the project that we are proposing, is an educational component through Fernbank Science Center, a website, an educational component that tells people, where these animals are. We hope to learn some things as scientists about their ranging patterns, their dietary patterns, and so, that's something that we would like to do is to, develop a website and share some of this information with the general public.
Yes, sir, right there, please.
Have any other communities done a website like that?
Yes.
Yes. Who is there?
There's some great ones out there. There's one in Rhode Island. It's called Narragansett Bay. Look up, just Google the Conservation Agency. It's an organization, and the site is in Rhode Island, and they've done some really great things. There's a really great study in Chicago, in metropolitan Chicago, that Mary cited. Stan Garrett is the guy who's in charge of that. He's been doing that study for about 12 years, and so they've got a really great one in Metro Chicago. And so we've been looking at those and would hope to model, if we were able to get something going, those are good models to work from.
Okay, and just a couple more, and then I'm going to let Christy Bortage speak. Yes, sir. Just last, that's will be the last question.
Hi, Chris Rosenthal. I'm an Atlanta native. First of all, I want to say that this is a very responsible group meeting. I was very impressed. When we go to different neighborhood meetings, a lot of them pretty shoddily put together, and I think y'all did a great job of everything there. I am concerned with the way things turned, as well as the general mode of blame versus responsibility. First of all, I took the time to look up rabies cases by coyotes and rabies in general in the state over the past 8 years, excuse me. And there have been 9 coyote rabies cases. And of all the animals that are the major wild animals that have them, which are skunks and raccoons and skunks, raccoons, foxes, and bats, are the 4 major ones, coyotes are the lowest. So there's a lot of the others, and of course all cats and dogs, their numbers are much higher than coyotes. More people are actually hurt by kites and toasters than coyotes. The other thing is, in talking about blame versus responsibility, and this doesn't mean I hate cats, please. You wouldn't let your children run around where there's a pedophile. You wouldn't let your wife run around where there's a rapist. And for you to let your cats run around, whether there's a coyote or not, and think it's someone else's fault if your cat gets run over or eaten by a coyote, you need to reevaluate your outlook. You don't let your kids run around. There have been no, to my knowledge, and the guy from the DNR, or maybe y'all can say, there's been no coyote attacks in Georgia on humans.
Right.
That's wrong, there have been coyote attacks.
There's no Georgia record of a coyote biting a person.
Okay, let's move on, and we can look it up. We can all get out our phone. Half of us can get out our phone and fact check that. But go ahead and continue, just for about 30 more seconds.
Yeah, I just want to say that I think that it's great that you have these traps you claim are the most humane. I don't believe anything that's going to smack down on the leg is not going to hurt it. I'd love to watch you stick our finger on the leg. And I'm not being a sarcastic person here. I just think their bones are more fragile than our fingers. And I just don't believe if it didn't smack it and trap it hard and possibly break it, that they wouldn't all pull out, whether it's...
After the meeting, you come up and look at the traps. But let me go ahead and conclude. I'm going to let 2 people speak for just a few seconds. I'm going to let Christy Bortage finish this out. Now, she's from this neighborhood, and she was instrumental in starting off coyote meetings. And somewhat over a year ago, she had a cat. And the cat was given to her and her husband as a consolation for a lost child. And she heard a ruckus outside her house one day. She works from home. She went outside. A coyote was taking off with her cat. She ran after the coyote with the cat, and they got away, dropped the cat, but the cat was done. So she wants to say something briefly, right? Do you want to come up here and say it?
Yeah.
And then and then Bruce McGregor would like to say something, and then we'll break up and hang out and talk with whomever you want to. So just a brief.
Real quick. My main concern at this point is that we do not have a system to record what is happening in our community. We do not have a way to know if coexisting is working or not. I think we should contact our representatives in the state and insist that a metro-wide, at least metro-wide, system for reporting incidences and for having some data. There was a research done out of Ohio State that said that most states do not have a system, and it is sorely needed. The coyote attacks are attacking humans. They are taking our dogs off the leash. They are jumping our fences and taking our children are attacking dogs in the backyard. We don't have a system, and we desperately need a system. And if our representatives can't get involved in this, then I don't know who else can. Department of Natural Resources, my understanding, do not take an interest because it's not a animal that can be trapped, or it's not an animal for profit, and it's not an endangered species. So therefore, no record is being kept on the county. So how do we know?
Thank you.
Licenses to trappers are DNR profits from those, and from fur sellers, and from fox
All right,
pens.
sir. Bruce McGregor is the president, outgoing president of the Blue Hill Civic Association. He wants to talk about an unrelated matter while a bunch of people are here, and then we'll break up, stay as long as you want to, up to 1 hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Bob. Thanks for coming. I'd like to give a round of applause to Bob for putting this together. He has been a great division chair. And I appreciate Ann stepping in. And Jeremy. And we'll take it from there. There is another issue that the Civic Association has been heavily involved in, and that is the Noonan Buckler property on Clifton Road. This is next to Burbank Park. We believe the county has issued an improper land development permit for this property. We obtained a